wide-ranging and comprehensive review into how complaints against former Deputy Police Commissioner Jevon McSkimming were handled. Its findings are deeply troubling, revealing serious failings in the former police executive and raising real questions about oversight, judgment and accountability of the former leaders. It's very clear that the woman at the centre of this was failed by former senior police and by the system. What is also clear is that this cannot continue to happen. That is why the government is acting decisively to install the strongest statutory oversight mechanism available to it, Inspector General of Police. An Inspector General of Police would bolster the IPCA, which would transition into the new oversight body, but with additional powers and functions. Details are still being worked on, but the end result will be to restore public confidence in police. New Zealanders will rightly ask how someone facing such serious allegations as McSkimming was appointed to one of the most senior roles in police and later considered for an even higher one. The government shares this concern, and we're taking action. The IPCA report also raises questions about the recruitment process for McSkimming to become Deputy Police Commissioner. The Public Service Commission, or PSC, has taken this seriously and proactively commissioned an independent review of its appointment process, led by Miriam Dean KC. That review found the process was generally sound, but it also found areas where the PSC could have gone further. Those recommendations have now been implemented, and the PSC has strengthened its integrity checks, improved documentation and added new steps to make sure candidates and referees are upfront and honest. But even the best processes rely on full and honest disclosure, and in this case, that did not happen. Let's be clear, this could have been avoided if senior police at the time had acted with integrity, called out bad behaviour when they saw it, and properly investigated allegations when they were made. The public has to be able to trust the police and have trust in our leaders and our public sector, and they have a right to expect that when things go wrong, people are held to account, and that is what we are doing. I'll now hand over to my colleague, Police Minister Mark Mitchell.
Thank you, Attorney General. Good evening. I want to acknowledge the Independent Police Conduct Authority for their comprehensive work on the report. The findings reveal significant flaws in decision-making, judgment and actions, raising serious concerns regarding the integrity and conduct of a group of individuals, primarily at the very top of the previous police executive. In saying this, I acknowledge those staff highlighted in the review as having showed exceptional moral courage. They've done themselves, their colleagues and their organisation proud. At the centre of the investigation is a woman who has been let down by the previous police executive and the system. I cannot express how frustrated and disappointed I've been since becoming aware of the situation. I can assure her and all New Zealanders that the government is taking these findings extremely seriously. On becoming Police Minister, I've been unequivocal in my expectations of police that conduct and integrity must be held at the highest standard across the police service. I've acted decisively at every juncture in standing down and then recommending the removal of the former Deputy Police Commissioner. As a government, we will continue to do what is needed to ensure this does not happen again. Police have also accepted all the recommendations in the report. The Police Commissioner will speak to that in more detail shortly. The New Zealand Police enjoy strong public trust and confidence. It is imperative that this trust is maintained. That comes with strong action on the part of the government. Finally, I do want to stress that these adverse findings should not be seen as a reflection on our police service as a whole. There are 15,000 dedicated men and women in police who serve and protect our communities with distinction and bravery every day. I want to emphasise how proud I am of our outstanding frontline staff and restate that this government backs our police in the critical work they do. Like most Kiwis and our police officers, I'm extremely disappointed in what has been revealed by this report. I want the public to be reassured that this government takes this seriously and is working to do everything we need to do to prevent this happening again. I'll now ask the Commissioner to make some comments.
Thank you, Minister and Attorney General. The events and findings set out in the IPCA report made for appalling reading and showed a total lack of leadership and integrity at the highest level. The report is thorough and convincing, and I accept the recommendations and the intent of them. The report has set out troubling departures by former senior leaders of police from the usual processes for dealing both with sexual assault complaints and with investigations into police officers. It was not until late 2024 that an investigation was set up to properly investigate those claims. That should have happened from the start. Prior to that, integrity checks and balances were bypassed. There was interference from the highest levels, and the interests and ambitions of a senior police officer were put above the interests of a vulnerable woman. I want to apologise to the woman at the centre of this for the repeated early failures in following the proper processes investigating this matter by those at such a senior level of police. You had asked for help, you were badly let down. That was unacceptable. I acknowledge those police staff who did stand up and challenge what was happening here. I thank them for their courage, for their leadership and the integrity they showed in doing so. What has happened here has angered me. It was a kick in the guts for the 15,000 women and men of New Zealand Police who turn up to work every day and night to serve New Zealanders and keep them safe. It was not those staff who were found wanting here. It was a failing of leadership. The actions and attitudes set out in the report are inexcusable and show disrespect and disregard for what New Zealand Police stands for. My new leadership team will take ownership of the response to this and implement recommendations swiftly. Some steps have already been taken. I have appointed an independent King's Counsel to conduct employment investigations where required. I am currently undertaking an extensive refresh of the police executive and wider leadership, including the appointment of 2 statutory deputy commissioners. The IPCA recommendations to strengthen the role of the Integrity and Conduct Unit will form part of that refresh. I look forward to getting the new executive in place to help me steer New Zealand Police. The report's recommendations are relevant to other work I already have underway to strengthen integrity. A revision of the Police Code of Conduct is underway, aimed at strengthening accountability. I recently ordered an immediate uplift of the Police National Integrity Unit with an additional 6 investigators. That unit handles investigations into police staff. The processes for investigating senior leaders were too easily ignored and bypassed here, despite objections by some. That is a concern, and I agree extra safeguards are needed. I welcome the IPCA's recommendations and the government's decisions in terms of achieving that. Earlier this year, I also invited the Public Service Commission to conduct a performance improvement review into police with a particular focus on integrity and culture. That is now happening. I expect my new leadership team to show integrity and competence, to be in touch with the front line and with the expectations of the public. Leading New Zealand Police is a privilege and rightly carries responsibilities and expectations. From day one, leadership and accountability have been priorities for me. Integrity is a core value of the New Zealand Police, and I have emphasised standards and expectations many times. I also want to speak to the victims of sexual violence. This woman was let down through the initial failings of police to hear and act on her complaint. But what happened here will dismay and anger the dedicated specialist investigators around the country who put everything into their work, trying to hold the perpetrators of sexual violence to account and to keep people safe. The absolute worst outcome of this would be if anyone did not feel safe in reporting sexual assault to police, or did not think police would listen and investigate thoroughly. I want to assure you that is not the case. The attitudes on display here are not attitudes I have experienced among specialist investigation team staff or when working in this field myself, nor are they attitudes acceptable to me. I know some people will question whether police have learned the lessons of the past after reading this report. Our specialist sexual assault teams are highly trained and dedicated. Over many years, police has put a lot of resource and effort into developing and implementing very robust processes for dealing with sexual violence complaints. One of the most disappointing things about this report was that a small group of senior leaders at the time elected to depart from those processes. It was not the processes that were at fault here. It was people at a very senior level deciding to ignore and put aside those processes out of self-interest. I will do my utmost to ensure that cannot ever happen again. Thank you.
As you've just referenced, there were processes in the place at the time. Those failed, according to this report, due to human failure. Why should New Zealanders now trust that the same thing isn't just going to happen again in the future?
Yes, look, as I have said, I know how much progress New Zealand Police has made over the years. We are a lot better. The processes are there. Under my leadership, this will never happen again, but this must never happen again for New Zealand Police. We have good processes in place for a reason. That is to protect the integrity of investigations. What happened here was those were departed from.
Can
I just also add to this, before we go to other questions? It is one of the reasons that we are moving towards the Inspector General of Police model, which is a significantly more invasive process than the IPCA has. So, for instance, the Inspector General of the Intelligence Services can basically go into any file, any place, any time, anywhere. Same with this. It's going to be significantly more invasive. But as the Commissioner said, it's not the processes that failed, it was the people who failed. But anyway, that's the other response for that.
Commissioner, can I just ask, can we rewind a little bit? Which former senior leaders are you talking about? Can you name them for us?
Well, I mean, the report speaks for itself. You will know who they are.
But can you just name them now?
It references the former Commissioner of Police, it references the former Deputy Commissioners of Police, it references Assistant Commissioner level, so the most senior level.
Based on these findings, would you have any trust in Andrew Coster to run any agency that's related to public service?
Well, I know that, as you know, I'm the Minister for the Public Service. The Commissioner for the Public Service has agreed with Mr Coster that he will now be on leave while the Commissioner of the Public Service undertakes his investigation. And obviously, as you would imagine, this is an employment matter, and I must be very careful what I say, but I think you can read the report. It's pretty obvious a massive failure of leadership.
Considering that report, why does there need to be a separate investigation by the Public Service Commission?
Because there's an employment contract between the Public Service Commission and Mr Costa.
As a political leader and as a senior...
Mr Costa to stand down?
Well, he's already now on leave, I understand, as at tomorrow or today.
As a political leader and someone who talks about standards, do you think it is acceptable to have a CE in the public service having had the findings found against them that have been found in this report?
If this was me being named in this report, I would be ashamed of myself. And I think that's what I can say. I would be deeply ashamed. And so I think that anybody who has read this report and read the findings should be reflecting on what they can possibly add to the roles that they have.
Deputy Commissioner Tani Kurta resigned earlier this year, so failures have been identified in this report regarding her conduct. If she was still in her position today, would have you sacked her?
That's not a matter for me. As a warranted Deputy Commissioner, that would be a matter for...
Minister to Mark Mitchell that you wouldn't be happy with her in your executive?
I would have provided advice to the Minister of Police. To the Public Service Commissioner, who would have provided that to the Minister of Police, yes.
And that advice, can you just spell out what that would have been?
Well, I mean, I think the report speaks for itself. Of course, at that time, I was not aware of the contents of this report, so I wasn't able to do that. But I had expressed already my disappointment and concern in relation to the former Deputy Commissioner when I became aware that she had visited Mr McSkimming when he was on serious charges. And I explained quite clearly that that fell well short of my expectations, was not good judgment and was very poor decision making.
Commissioner, can I just ask, for women who may be watching this press conference who will say that, this woman came forward multiple times to appeal and to make her case and she wasn't believed, how can they have any confidence that if they decide to come forward with an experience that they've had, that they will be believed?
Yes. Look, as I have said, New Zealand Police has done a lot of work over the years. We've put a lot of resource into ensuring that when we have allegations of sexual assault presented to us, that we provide the best possible service and decision making to those victims. The processes that New Zealand Police have in place are strong, they are fit for purpose, they are good. What happened here is not a failure of the processes, it's the failure of former senior leaders of New Zealand Police who took those processes out and made decisions based on certain individuals and their career aspirations.
What happens for this woman now, this woman at the centre of this? Is it simply an apology? Is there a conversation about any sort of compensation for the prosecution?
I have already reached out to her legal representative to express my apology, and at an appropriate time I'm sure there'll be further conversations. As the Commissioner of Police, I take this report and its findings very, very seriously, and she has been failed. There is no doubt about that, and that is why I've already reached out to express my huge disappointment and also support for her, and we went.
Do you think that more will have to be done by police to make this right?
Oh, look, we have a lot of work to do. I mean, she is going to want to be reassured that we put things in place to ensure this never happens again. And, within the report there are a lot of findings, and I accept all of those. My new leadership team and I will own that, and we will work swiftly to ensure that we put things in place. I've already started that, as I've said, a number of things that I have done already I know will strengthen our response to these situations to ensure this never happens again.
Now, how would you describe the culture and the behaviour within the previous executive?
Well, I was not in New Zealand for most of 2024. I lived offshore. I got on with my job. What I will say here is that I had absolutely no idea about any of this going on, about the references of a relationship, conversations that may well have been occurring. I knew nothing. Frankly, I was too busy doing my job I was focused on what I needed to do at that time as an Assistant Commissioner, providing support to the front line, delivering services for New Zealanders in terms of policing. I had absolutely no idea because, frankly, I just got on with my job.
Based on the report, though, how would you describe the behaviour and the apparent culture within those senior ranks?
Well, the IPCA investigation has been very, very thorough, and it speaks for itself, frankly. Hugely disappointing. This hasn't just let down 15,000 men and women of New Zealand Police who do an incredible job. This has let down New Zealanders because they expect more of their police officers, but even more of their senior police leaders. This is an absolute disgrace.
Is this the only thing that senior leadership team that you named, is this the only thing that they knew about, or were there other?
Well, frankly, as I've said, I got on with my job. I didn't embroil myself in conversations that weren't focused on doing the right thing for New Zealand, along with my staff. So I did not participate in conversations. Frankly, I had no friendship with these people. I got on with my job as a policeman.
What I'm getting at is there more to come out other than this relationship with this woman?
Oh, look, I mean, the report is very, very thorough. I welcome the recommendations. My job with a new leadership team is to move forward on this, these recommendations. Is there more to come? Look, I've got a job to do for the country, for my organisation.
We'll take questions from Sam. Sam's been waiting for a question.
Can you just tell us more about this Inspector General role? Will you need to pass legislation?
Yes, we probably will. So we've got the Ministry of Justice is working on this. You will appreciate the fact that we've had this press conference this hour of the evening because we've been waiting for the suppression orders to be significantly dropped so that we could actually talk about it. But I certainly saw the report in confidence as the Attorney General and Public Service Commissioner about maybe 2 to 3 weeks ago. And it was clear to me that we had to, it was in the end of what we've had, we needed to move to a much higher level. And the Inspector General of Police would be the highest level that we could bring in, and it would also involve us coming more into line with other jurisdictions. So the Ministry of Justice is the policy arm. They are undertaking that work and looking to see how that would work. So I briefed Cabinet on it yesterday, on what I could say with the suppression orders in place. And I've also briefed the Leader of the Opposition today with, again, what I could say before the lifting of the suppression orders, and he has agreed that they would support us in principle with what we're doing. I think we've got to get legislation through, and we want, obviously, the support of the whole House.
When do you expect that first Inspector General will be in place then, and the intention is that this will be a permanent inspectorate, that's not a temporary measure?
No, this has to be permanent. This has to be the way of doing business from now on, which is a far higher level of supervision and far more power to the inspectors, basically. So, Inspector General, that is. So, it will take some months to go through that process, but it's not going to be a rush job. But we have, I'm told that there are other jurisdictions with very similar systems, so we will look to see what works best.
Commissioner, just on that, with respect, do you think people in your position and the Deputy Commissioner positions at the top of the police have too much unchecked power?
No, look, I welcome the announcement by the government to put an Inspector General in place. That is not uncommon in policing around the world. I welcome that. Anything that is going to ensure this never happens again, I welcome.
How do you, what do you say to people that look at this and go, the whole senior levels of police were just looking after their mates?
Oh, look, the report speaks for itself. It's appalling. Of course, I'm let down because this impacts on my organisation and all the good people who turn out to do an amazing job. It's let us all down, but as I've said, it's let more than just police people down. It's let New Zealanders down because this is disgraceful behaviour.
The report says that Commissioner Costa inappropriately tried to influence an investigation into the woman's complaint and to persuade the IPCA that the matter could be resolved quickly. How serious is that for a police commissioner to be getting involved in trying to inappropriately influence investigations?
It's very serious.
So let's put it this way, if a minister tried to do that, I'm sure that the Prime Minister would have them out the door that day.
The IPCA says that they believe that there was no collusion here, but that sounds an awful lot like some kind of collusion.
Well, I didn't say collusion, but I think you'd have to say it's an extraordinary amount of people all agreeing with each other.
Commissioner, is this corruption?
Look, this report speaks for itself. I have no doubt that people will interpret the report in their own way.
Would you say it's corruption?
Well, I think if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's not looking good, is it?
Well,
No, I think it's really important. The IPCA did not say that it was corruption. It could, however, when you look at the facts, it's an extraordinary set of events and extraordinary facts, and it must never happen again. And as the Commissioner said, this was all with some sort of groupthink going on, but there were thankfully at least 3 people, lower ranked people, who stood up for what they knew was the right thing, and one of them sent this matter to the IPCA as a complaint. And without her work and the work of the others, this might never have seen the light of day.
Could prosecution follow? Could prosecution follow? Like, will you undertake any investigation that could lead to prosecution as a result of what's in this report?
Look, it's too early to make those sorts of decisions. If, in fact, a breach of the law is apparent to us, then of course we would do that. But it's too early for me to... the report is so thorough. It's convincing. And I welcome the recommendations. I welcome the government's support and recommendations as well. It's far too early to be talking about that.
Were any government ministers...
A clarification as to when you all individually became first aware of the woman's claims?
Yes, certainly. Look, I started as the New Zealand Police Commissioner on the 25th of November last year. I was briefed on this matter a couple of days before that. Prior to that, I had absolutely no knowledge.
So I was briefed on the 6th of November by the outgoing Police Commissioner Andy Costa, and that is when I first became aware of the situation. There was an IPCA investigation underway in relation to it.
What did he say about it at that time?
Well, I'm not going to go into the details other than to say that he obviously gave me a full outline and brief in terms of the circumstances surrounding the behaviour attributable to Deputy Commissioner Jevon McSkimming.
Did he identify any of his own behaviour?
No.
Had you heard any whisperings or talk or rumours?
No, that was the first time that I'd heard of it, when he brought it forward to me on the 6th of November. And of course, from that point on, I held massive... I'm a father with daughters. I'm an uncle. And so, of course, I had massive concerns.
Are you aware of any ministers in the previous government being made aware of the complaints under any no surprises?
No, I'm not.
So they were never told by Andrew
I don't
Costa?
know. I don't know. Well, I can't speak to the previous government. I can't speak to how much or how little engagement they had with their police executive. That is a question for them.
I spoke to the opposition leader today. He was pretty clear that it was news to him. So,
Did Andrew Costa's explanation of what had occurred to you on that day, did it bear a resemblance to what the report has currently found out?
Yes, it did, but I didn't accept that account.
In that meeting, Minister, can you recall what your initial reaction was to hearing that news and what you said to the Commissioner?
I was very unhappy because I felt that that the approach that was taken was not the right one, and I was very concerned about the young lady involved.
And what did you do next after that?
Sorry?
What did you do next after that?
So the next day I met with I had a meeting with the Public Service Commission and the Solicitor General, and I brought my concerns forward.
Minister, can I ask you about the timeline of the Andrew Costa investigation by the Public Service Commissioner? When do you expect that to be completed?
I can't tell you what that is yet because the Public Service Commissioner has, like me, only seen the report basically a couple of weeks ago. and he is undergoing his own process, employment process, obviously, questions that need to be answered. So I really can't give you a time frame, but like you, I've read the report.
But in terms of what that could do, could that, I mean, hypothetically lead to any, if there were to be any findings, any disciplinary or...
I can't go into that. It's a matter between the Public Service Commissioner and Mr Costa.
You referenced a KC investigation into employment issues. How many staff that are still with the police are potentially implicated?
Three.
What does that say? 3 people within a fairly large organisation. Does that speak to why you don't want us to tarnish the whole reputation?
Yeah, well, it does. It does. I mean, I lead an organisation of 15,000 men and women who do an incredible job day and night across the country. I know how hard they work because I'm connected to the front line. This report, the findings, is a kick in the guts for them. They are no different to me. We take a huge amount of pride in the job that we do for our country. That won't change. What will change is we will make swift action of implementing this with my new leadership team, and we will do our absolute best to ensure this never happens again.
Are those 3 people on leave? Is there any investigation? What's happening with them?
As I've said, I've instructed an independent King's Counsel, and that those investigations are progressing well, and I would expect to receive some advice in due course. So they continue to work for now.
Yeah, many of these themes, etc., that the IPCA mentioned in their report are similar to the Baisley report that was released in 2007. How can you say that police culture has changed, that it's improved when effectively they're very, very similar?
Sure. Look, as I have said, history of New Zealand Police when it comes to matters involving sexual assault has meant that we have done a huge amount of work to improve the way that we investigate and respond to allegations. And as I've also said, that my specialist investigators across the country are very, very dedicated. They're very good at what they do. They have my full support. What happened here was not a departure from those processes and all the changes that we've made over the years. What happened here was that people were interfering and separating through own self-interest the investigations that were underway from those processes. It's the former Executive New Zealand Police that made those decisions, not my specialist people across the country who do an incredible job.
Minister, when did you find out about the investigation into Costa? What was the date again? Minister of Police?
Into...
When
You
did
mean
Costa tell you
into
that there was an investigation?
You mean to Skimming or Costa?
When did Costa tell you about this
6th
investigation?
of November. 6th of November, he told me.
This last year.
So what,
Last year, yeah. 6th of November last year.
What did you tell Nicola Willis as Social Investment Minister?
The advice for me is the right levers and the right actions to take as a minister was to meet with the Solicitor General and with PSC, and that's what I did.
And so do you know, did Nicola Willis get told at all that she had just appointed this person to the head of the Social Investment Agency?
At that stage, the issue wasn't about Andrew Costa. The issue was about Jevon McSkimming and the young lady. That was what the issue was about. And that's the one that I was addressing. It was the issues around Andrew Costa. We all now clearly see in the report that yes, without a doubt, he was the leader of the executive. He should be held to account for that because of what we're dealing with. But at that time, when I was informed on the 6th of November, the issue wasn't with Andrew Costa, it was with Jevon McSkimming, and it was with my concern around the young woman.
In your view, how should he be held to account?
We need to...
Well, that's as the Attorney General said, we can't speak to that. That is a process now that is that PSC are handling. As the Attorney General said, he has been stood down, and they are working through a process.
Can I just before you wrap up, just at the heart of this is a survivor, a victim of sexual assault. Minister Collins, how can you give assurance or any comfort to survivors that an Inspector General of Police will make any difference?
Well, the New Zealand police have learnt a lot over the years. And if you think back to what happened, those terrible attacks and assaults on Louise Nicholas, for instance, and the Basie report that came out from it, you know, I don't think the front line of police is the problem. The problem here was that, certainly from the report, is that there was a group of very senior police officers who essentially stopped, or in some ways limited the investigation of the allegations of assault. So there's been no finding on those allegations of assault that have been through a court or any other process other than to consider whether or not they can be prosecuted. The issue is that the attempts any attempts by police officers to have this looked into, these allegations, were basically stopped or shoved aside, or even, in some cases, were not probably career enhancing for those officers who were doing the right thing. So I'd say to you this, is that the New Zealand police are overall 15,000 people, both uniformed and civilian, incredibly good people who go out every day, put their lives and bodies on the line for us all, and they have been massively let down, as this woman who is referred to in the report as Ms. Z had been. And yes, massively let down by a leadership team that seemed more interested in protecting one of their own, a very senior police officer, instead of actually getting to the nub of the issue, dealing with it properly, and then seeing what came out of it. And the IPCA report is the first thing that we've had to give us a very good rendition of what actually occurred in a logical and very well researched manner.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.